Hello and welcome to the worst mistake that I have ever made. Buying a 2006 Raptor 700. I bought it for $3,200 and put about $1,500 into it, and now I have nothing left. But yes, this is a 2006 Raptor 700. It's not the R version because they didn't make the R version in 2006. This is just the regular version, but someone did put the R shocks on this four-wheeler, therefore kind of making it a Raptor 700R because that's the only difference. Except for this one has a bad engine now. I bought this running for $3,200 and I was driving it a little bit and started hearing a knocking sound. Well, I replaced the piston and the wrist pin thinking that was it. That wasn't it. Then I rebuilt the water pump because the sound kind of sounded like it was coming from the water pump. And that wasn't it. I checked the crank to see if there was any play in the crank. There was no play in the crank on this four-wheeler. So what else could it be? The rod was good, the piston was good, and the crank was good. I had no idea what it would have been. Well, come to find out, these have balancers in the front of the engine and in the back of the engine. In front of the piston and behind it. Not connected to the crank, but they spin and oppose the crank's rotating mass. Because a crank on a single cylinder engine will vibrate a lot. There's two counterbalancers on the front and back of the engine that counterbalance the crank. Therefore, the four-wheeler runs smoother. Well, apparently, the front counterbalancer in this, the bearing was shot in it. So, because of that, it made the counterbalancer hit the crank and busted the counterbalancer through the front of my engine, which I'll show you here in a minute. But yes, I always wanted a Raptor 700. I finally got one, and it upset me majorly. These stock have about 47 horsepower. This one is built because, like I said, I replaced the piston in it. It has aftermarket exhaust. It has a fuel tuner in it. It's all been upgraded, basically. So this should be a little under 60 horsepower, somewhere around there. Quite a bit of power for a four-wheeler this size. But it hurts very bad when you put $400 in a piston and then the bottom end goes out. Literally the same day. It's a bad feeling. I like to flip four-wheelers, I like to buy four-wheelers, and I like to fix them up and sell them, apparently. I don't know why I like to sell them. I like to get something better. So I started with an old red four-wheeler. It was a Yamaha Big Bear 350. I built it from the ground up. New bearings, CV axles, new rear end bearings, everything that could be replaced, I replaced on it. I don't know why I do these things. Then I sold it for $2,500. and then put $700 on top of that, a boot, and bought a Raptor 700. When you buy the cheapest Raptor 700 in the country, be careful, because it never turns out good. The night that I went to get this, it was snowy that night, and it was extremely cold, and I had to go get this in the mountains. Well, come to find out, the radiator was full of water, the block was full of water, everything froze up. Luckily, it didn't do any damage, because it was kind of a slush, because it had some antifreeze in it, but not enough to stop freezing. But they decided to put water in it like an idiot. They did, and everything froze up. Well, I got that fixed, heated up the block, I got everything running good, and the four-wheeler ran fine for a bit. But I kept noticing that there was metal shavings in the oil. Well, it looks like they just rebuilt the top end on this because the cylinder jug is brand new. But you can tell that the head and the jug are different colors. The head's the original head, but the jug is brand new. So I thought that maybe they broke it in and never changed the oil on it. So what I do, change the oil, everything was fine. Did it again, there was more shavings in it. I was like, maybe I disturbed all the shavings left over and that's what clogged it up again. So I did it again. This time I rebuilt the top end, and there was a problem. The piston and the wrist pin were worn out really bad, which I'll show you in a picture right here. As you can see, the wrist pin and piston are worn very bad. So I replaced that with a CP piston, which is the best that you can get for a four-wheeler, in my opinion, better than any other brand. So I spent the money on that. I paid more, but it's worth it. So I was like, oh great, the sound was coming from the wrist pin because it was wore out where it connects to the piston. Wrong, because it did it after I replaced it, and which really pissed me off, because I checked the crank was good, the piston was the only thing that really had problems. All the major things that I thought it could be, I checked and or fixed. Well, nothing happened. It just still made a weird sound. So I put it on the trailer, went to bring it to a friend's house to show him what it sounded like. You know, I gave it a little pop revs, not anything high RPM or nothing, just like you're barely getting onto it just to start, just like barely hitting it, very quick, just to get it to make a knocking sound. Well, I did it once, it went clunk, and then oil started pouring out all over the trailer in the road. And then I look under the engine, and there it is. The engine case is spider webbed. There's cracks all over it, which I'll show you here in a second. And I just never thought it'd be a counterbalancer that would do that. It just blows my mind that that's ever the problem. But let me bring you in and show you the damage that it did. As you can see right here, see the cracks? This is the end of the counterbalancer bearing right here, this round spot. So there's a bearing that sits right here, and one on the other side that's in the water pump, which is on the other side. So I'm assuming that the counterbalancer bearing was bad, therefore it had wobble, and the counterbalancer, it's like a big weight on one side of a shaft, and it hit the crank. So the crank and counterbalancer hit each other when I gave it gas, and therefore shoving the counterbalancer weight through the side of the engine, causing this. I'm glad I wasn't going like really revving it up when it happened, because it would have completely just knocked the whole front of the engine off. Maybe I can repair this by welding it, but I'll have to see when I get into it. Here's another thing. If you're looking to get a Raptor 700, these right here on the older models are aluminum, made out of the same thing as the case. They corrode and get stuck in there. I had to replace my caps, my crank cap and my timing cap, because these literally were seized in there. I had to break them open with a screwdriver and hammer, and literally shattered the caps all to pieces. But I got them out. I got them replaced with these, which are nice CNC. These things are really freaking good. You can get them on eBay. Awesome brand. I have this brand all over this four-wheeler. And another thing I'd recommend is getting this case saver right here. It's in case your chain breaks, it gives it cushion before it busts your case, right? So if this chain breaks, this kind of acts like rubber and protects it from the chain binding up and cracking the side of your case open, which you don't want, because this is your stator case and your stator's built into this, and that's an extremely expensive fix. Just a heads up. And as you can see, it's a pretty good looking four-wheeler. This right here, this is where the bumper is supposed to mount, but you can see there's no tabs here because they cut them off because this thing has been in a wreck before and it did some damage. So I spent the money and bought the nicest bumper that I could find, and now it doesn't run, so that's great. I bought a new chain, X-ring, which I did my research, and this is supposed to be like the best. So I got an X-ring chain and a new seat cover because my seat cover is bad. I also put these shock covers on because these had rust on the shocks. I know I need to take them off and do it the right way, but it just gets really expensive. And if you've ever had a four-wheeler, you know that the reverse knob can break and just hang. So this one, I replaced it with a new metal, nice CNC machine bracket. Awesome. This is nice CNC. This is nice CNC. I really like the brand, but I bought a see-through oil cover. That way I can see if the oil's flowing or not. That's a big deal with four-wheelers, because if it stops flowing, you're not going to know until the engine seizes up. So I invested in one of these right before it blew up. And then this right here, it was made of the same aluminum, and it was all stripped out and everything, so I had it replaced. Here's the water pump that I rebuilt. Here's the aftermarket exhaust that came with the four-wheeler, which was one of the selling points for me. I love the exhaust. And inside, under the seats, also a fuel controller, which I'll show you here in a second. As you can see, it's a pretty nice four-wheeler. It comes with the Pro Armor Nerf racks. These are very expensive. That was another selling point for me. And let's lift the seat up. Look under here. And that's pretty nice. I got an uni filter, put it in there. Right here is the fuel controller, right here. Because the engine's built, you have to have a fuel controller for it to work, because it won't get enough fuel, you know, for the piston or anything, or the exhaust. But as you can tell, visually, it's a pretty nice four-wheeler. I bought it, that's why, because I thought it was pretty cool. And plus, they're really hard to find for that much, so I kind of jumped on it, and now I got messed up. But that's how I lost $5,000, just like that. So if you guys want to see me, like, rebuild the bottom end on this, which I hate getting into that, because there's so many gears, because the engine and transmission are all one piece. I never take apart engines because there's so many little pieces that you can mess up or lose, and when you put it back together, you'll never know until it quits working. But I have to do something. I can't leave it how it is, or I'd lose a bunch of money. But if you guys want to see me rebuild this four-wheeler, which I'm still going to do it anyways, even if you say yes or no, tell me in the comments if you want me to, which I'm going to. You're not stopping me, but maybe stop me from doing it on camera. But I wanted to do like a time-lapse thing, you know, of me building it and stuff, just having fun, showing, you know, the internals, how this works, how it comes apart. Leave a comment, because I would love to get into stuff like this, and then hopefully I can do some trail riding videos and stuff, because I love riding on trails. But if you guys want to see more of this, tell me in the comments. I'll see you in the next video.